Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. Happy Tuesday. It's March 24th, 2026. Let's see. 123 on the clock, 123. That's cool. Yeah, something is in order or right on time. Or maybe accelerating. Who knows? 123 on the clock. All right. Let's see what we got today. I hope you're doing well. It's a beautiful day where I am. I hope the sun is shining by you, in you. For sure. All right. Let's see what's going on today. Hierophant. Okay. And some type of community. Definitely some type of leader of a community or organization, an association. Could be a religious leader for sure, or maybe a benevolent leader, someone particularly generous. But let's see, because you never know with the Hierophant. It's all upright, but let's see what we got here. Ooh, Wheel of Fortune. Powerful leader that is sitting in a position that was like, it was their fate, is their destiny. You know, there it's like an appointment that was especially tailor-made or designed for someone or a certain type of someone. It's not like a position that anybody can just walk on to or walk into. And maybe if they do, or if they try, there just wouldn't be as high of a success rate, or there wouldn't be as great of an impact made, particularly of one that is in divine alignment, or, you know, some type of prophetic order. Yeah, it's just definitely giving an emphasis on like being kind of almost born into a certain like born either into a certain line of creativity or power, maybe even, you know, being born into a certain like bloodline that is powerful, or family that is powerful, or being born or next in line. Because I'll tell you what's coming to mind is like the I probably am gonna mess this up a little bit, but what I was seeing is like the priests in biblical texts, particularly like Aaron, you know, like how Aaron, ooh, shit. I just heard even farther back than that, the Melchizedek, how do you say that word? The Melchizedek order. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. That's even bigger, because I was seeing Aaron, who was like the priest in Moses' day, that was Moses' cousin, and he was appointed to be like the high priest of the community, you know, the people at that time, to really kind of like hold that position of righteousness, like hold the office of righteousness and devotion to service and to divine order, as the example, and then of course to disseminate that order unto the people, whether it be by inspiration or keeping the laws, whatever the case may be. Like, that was his mantle or his appointment, which was definitely a great responsibility to carry. But what it ended up happening is then it was ordered that his bloodline would ultimately continue on in that regard. So his sons were to be priests, and so on and so forth. Now the sons, I believe, did something a little shady, and I don't exactly know. Like, they broke some order and broke some laws. I think they were, like, if I remember correctly, like skimping on the sacrifices where you were supposed to offer the fat. They were like keeping it or something like that. They were doing something, maybe even worse than that. That was supposed to be like an offense to God at that time. So it put a blemish on that order that was to be, continuously passed down. But I don't know if it was picked up or how it was picked up again. That part about it, I'm a little bit unclear. But let me see. Yeah, where to go? Shoot. Oh, I wasn't saying it wrong. Melchizedek. I don't think I was. Hold on. The high priest forever in the order. Yeah, it was like the original high priest, more or less. Like, according to Christian, or not even just Christian, because this is like the Hebrew Bible where that was mentioned originally in Genesis 14:81, where he brings out the bread and wine and blesses Abraham, which we know, ultimately became, by way of the text, according to the text, the father of creation, or the nations, the nations as we more closely relate to it, reflectively. But that's not really what it's like the Melchizedek order. That's what I want to know. The order of Melchizedek is a biblically based priestly order described in the Bible, an eternal royal priesthood. Here it is. Oh shoot, I was kind of right. An eternal royal priesthood. Oh yeah, superior to the Levitical Aaronic, which was Aaron, order. So yes, Aaron came after that. This was like the original, but it was almost like the model, because for the children of Israel at that time, coming out of Egypt in captivity into more or less wilderness and building their own semblance of society, a lot of custom, I'm imagining, was lost in translation and had to be reestablished all over again, and like a establishment, a new covenant, as a matter of fact, kind of like a reestablishment of an old covenant with a new order and in a new world, because they were in a place that it was like, starting from scratch, bare bones, but there still was an order to reverence, and so there had to be like a regeneration of old customs and also of new customs, or even case in point, the 10 Commandments, I believe, is what came out of that era as well, like kind of words to live by, or a standard to govern yourself according to, because before they were ultimately enslaved, and were ruled by an iron fist in a foreign land. So yeah, so the priesthood, it is headed by Melchizedek, a mysterious king of Salem and the priest of the Most High God, who blessed Abraham and signifies the eternal priesthood of Jesus Christ. Wow. The King of Righteousness is also another inflection of the Melchizedek, King of Peace, appearing without recorded genealogy, birth, or death, serving as a prophetic type of Christ. I inherited those roles were moral. This order is based on an endless life. It is the priest forever in this order, acting as both king and priest, which transcends the Mosaic law and its requirements. And here it is, order. The meaning of order, this term refers to lineage, pattern, or manner of priesthood that is not restricted to a specific family line. So again, it's like a divine appointment. It's almost like, what is that? A little net. I just opened the window. It's almost like a brotherhood is what I'm getting. So, well, it's a priesthood, of course, but it's like there is an appointment, and those that have that appointment in common, like almost become a part of like almost a secret society, or just a fraternal order, so to speak. But it's not for the purposes of, division, or exclusion from creation or from the collective. Is more of a service to creation and to like a devotion to creation and to the collective, than anything, like, wow. So I don't know. I just had to clarify that because I heard it and I'm seeing it with this Wheel of Fortune. It's something powerful that somebody's either being, or some, because like I'm definitely not necessarily getting it's one, just one. Obviously, even when you consider the time of Moses, where eventually even he was overwhelmed and guided as a source of relief to appoint priests that would support the guidance of the people, instead of it all kind of filtering on him, to him, through him, and being burdened onto him. So maybe that's where Aaron came into play, where I don't remember. I know I'm going to mix it up, but eventually there were as I said, there was a whole priesthood. As a matter of fact, by the time Joshua crossed the people over, headed to the actual promised land where they were on their way in the beginning, the priests were the ones that had the responsibility of going ahead of the people, stepping into the water, so that the water, maybe they knew, maybe they didn't, but the waters ultimately stopped flowing so that the people could cross over on dry land. But the priest went ahead first. Again, it's like a service, a submission to the divine. There is favor attached to it for sure, but not without devotion first and foremost. So there's something here. Let's see what else that a priesthood is being regenerated or exalted in a more practical sense. So as it was different before Moses' time, then it became something when they were out of captivity in the wilderness, and it had evolved to something, evolution here with the Wheel of Fortune, and it evolved to something even more progressive by the time Joshua took over the mantle and crossed the people over, and on and on and on. Like it just continued even up until, from the Melchizedek priest up until Jesus Christ. Times had changed and evolved. Even then, like more or less the mission may have remained, consistent, or standard, more or less. But the strategy, the efforts, the execution, the appeal, the effort, you know, could have changed drastically from what it originally was to what we're ready to see in modern day. That it's taken on a whole nother form. And I would imagine probably going to look a lot more liberal than the constraints and the confinements that even the difference between Old Testament and New Testament, where there were certain rules and regulations that were to break them was condemning in a way, or you lived under a more strict rule than the religion amounted to be, or practices amounted to be as time moved on. It's like maybe there was, or there have been, more confinement on creation during times of learning and growing before there was an evolution to be able to handle more responsibility, maybe even more authority. Here it is, governing over self. As I said before, from going from being a slave and being told what to do at every point in your existence to now having free range in the wilderness. And there's a different governing that was established, but it was nothing as confining as being a slave, and even beyond then, it just continued to become more and more liberal to the point where now, we're gaining. What I'm feeling is that there is appointment individually to govern self by your own standard or measure of truth. And it's not so much about telling others what to do to be righteous or to be in right standing, divinely or otherwise. It's just about living that truth by your own example and in your own waking life, and that ultimately being the thing that is a service to mankind, to just be able to witness and behold the evidence of that level of empowerment. So that's essentially like you're carrying on the Melchizedek priest order, but in some nuance, inflection of it in this new era. Wow. High priesthood established in your own terms, by your own expression, ordained by your supreme, whatever that is to you. And ultimately, you more or less, you can set that bar as high or as low as you want to, but that ultimately becomes your potential, or the ceiling of your potential. This is powerful. Come on, somebody. The star. That's virtually limitless. And as I said, it's like, it's a destiny. It's an appointment that can't be refuted by anyone, really. The only refute there that, is effective is your own denouncing or renouncing. of this anointing, this appointment. Only you can say, no, that's too much for me, or no, I'm not worthy, or I'm not in order, or I'm not gifted enough, talented enough, righteous enough, holy enough, good enough. You know, only you can determine that, but it wouldn't be a decree from any higher authority, because this is the decree, this is the appointment, this is the declaration that some are assigned to be standout spirits in human form. And again, not to exercise or wield power over anyone else any more than the priests. I mean, well, you know, there was the human inclination to overindulge or fall out of line, even as I said with Aaron's own sons, you know. But generally speaking, when the conduction of power is pure and the vessel is allowing for that frequency to flow organically, it's not with the aura of dominance or positioning yourself to, what's the right word, to be better than anyone else particularly. It's to be an example of a possibility of expression that those that observe or witness or bear witness can either choose to find value in for themselves or not, you know. But without the stars, you know, it would get pretty dark. It does get pretty dark, you know, when it's bleak, when the prognosis is bleak, when there doesn't seem to be much hope. It's the stars that light this resonance of possibility, you know, even in obscurity. And there is great fortune and favor attached to that with the Wheel of Fortune here. I mean, it's a privilege in its own, but it's all also a responsibility. All right, I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna let that star be. Stay here? What's up? There's a new covenant right here. Or re-established covenant. Maybe even a renegotiation of terms, where those that fell have felt out of order because of, here it is, their background, their heritage, their upbringing, their life experiences, exposures. It's like being confirmed literally, like in the spiritual, the religious aspect of confirmation, which is like almost it's ceremonial for the most part, of like after baptism, in a sense, like establishing your like your devotion to in the case of religion, to Christianity, and being like a living example of the word of God, exemplifying the principles of God in your waking life. In a broader sense, it's about truth, and integrity, and stripping down all of the other dogmas and doctrines that may not apply to you, and so therefore you may have felt counted out, left out, or disqualified from this honor. It's like a lot of what's being revealed now is really stripping down the layers of things that have been more divisive than divine, and reestablishing a new commitment, of love with self first and foremost, like almost seeing self through a new lens. Like, oh wow, I guess I don't have to do this or do that, or have not done this or done that to qualify for, to be a leader, to be an example of, a divine, like divine design. You know what I mean? Like like the factory model, so to speak, of divine design. Like, you may not feel like you measure up to that standard or those specs, because of different things that have projected to you to be disqualifying. And now it's like that illusion is being released, and there's a new establishment of commitment here in that regard, because when you strip down all of those extra things and realize that and come to the revelation that you're good just as you are, then that empowers you to do so much more as you are, and with less effort or less resistance, because a lot of times the way that we are operating creatively, just beyond the religious layer, is always looking to kind of prove our worth and value, and our worthiness to receive, to create, to be a part, to be counted, to be understood, accepted, to be worthy. That's just in our human existence. Any higher vibration of that seems almost unimaginable or unattainable. So we can strip all of that away. It really does lighten the spirit to just create without limitation. And what does that ultimately do? Again, but anoint you in the priesthood of leadership that would step into the water first, fearlessly, or even with fear, to show that there's safety in that, on that path. Like, you can trust taking that path of sovereignty, or even an oath or a devotion to sovereignty in your natural life, where it doesn't mean that you have no deference or reverence of a higher power or a greater force. It's just that you believe you're integrated with it and you're an expression of it, and that nothing that's been man-made or created to refute that is going to take precedence over what you believe and what you've ultimately come to know. So it really does almost track like the transition of captivity to wilderness to promised land, that, rites of passage that we all take in some way, shape, and form in our waking lives, to get to the point where we feel empowered to live freely without restriction, without condemnation, but because there has been a grooming and a refining of our governance of righteousness in our own regard, where basically you don't need anybody to tell you what's right and wrong. You just act accordingly. And also take accountability and responsibility for the results that you create. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Oh, I'm gonna take that because it really tried to resist. The King of Pentacles. Yeah, you are strong and stable in your creativity, well established, becoming a reliable, dependable force of the divine. Well, a reliable force and source of creativity overall. Like what you contribute on account of this refinement is solid. Is something that has a strong foundation, that is dependable, that has longevity, that can be expanded upon. It could be just the consciousness of your creative freedom itself, that is expansive and that can be magnified and multiplied. Yeah, here's the foundation, the grounding here. Something that you could take to the bank. You could build a platform on, 155 on the clock. You could build a life on, a legacy on, perhaps to regenerate conscious creativity in a new era where, in a lot of ways, like the followers of Joshua's time, you never been this way before, to have so much power consciously, to have so little limitation, to really be able to have the freedom and liberty to decide what you do with your time, your energy, your resources, your wealth, your attention, without being told how to funnel that or what to filter it to. It could either make or break you. You could get lost in the sauce or become your own demise or your own destruction, fall away to your own destruction. Maybe overindulgence, having not using your freedom and your liberty for the most prosperous purposes, and it becomes a detriment to you, or it invokes certain behaviors that attract a certain karma and a resonance of response that is unfavorable. That could happen. Or you could, show and prove yourself to be as trustworthy and as responsible with this order of power as the divine clearly, has decided you are, and create something that's lasting, something that is pioneering, that is liberating for others, that's nurturing for others. So what it always and always has and always will come down to is the power of choice. Even in the most illusionary states of creation, there's always been choice in the matter, which is why I'm going to say something controversial, because I know it is very polarizing. Back when, I've said this before, but back when Kanye made the comment that like our ancestors had a choice regarding slavery, it was very triggering for a lot of people to for him to say that, because our first response is that no they didn't. They were being forced to be slaves, or they were being forced, you know, to do this or else, face death, or, you know, so many other more gruesome things before that. And yes, all of that is true, but there still was the choice of whether it was worth me keeping my life and staying in these conditions without resistance, even as you know, dire and devastating as they were, or as many did choose to rebel and or to run or to fight against or to free other slaves once they freed themselves. Like there were alternative choices that were made to just submitting to enslavement, and that makes the statement that he made not as, you know, heartless or even ignorant as it may come off on, you know, at first. But if you think about it, there's resonance of truth in that historically, considering that some did rebel, some jumped off the ship before they could even make it. You know, allegedly, who knows for sure, but so it is said that some jumped ship before they could even make it to this land. Some rebelled against, you know, their captors before or after they were put in chains. So there's always a choice, you know. That's one power that has, I mean, even if we're talking about biblical days, you know, you could choose to follow the laws as they were, or you could choose to break them, and you ultimately were submitted to whatever the consequences of your actions may be. And a lot of what we experience now as so-called consequences are in many ways self-inflicted on account of the conditionings that we have made agreement. There it is, the Two of Cups. We've made agreements with, or we have accepted as true for us. So for instance, if you've grown up in a religion that establishes certain parameters around your righteousness, when you step outside of that, you'll condemn yourself because of how you have deferred your standard of divinity to the doctrine, or whatever, you know, or even to whatever conditioning or teachings you submit to. But it doesn't necessarily or doesn't holistically mean that that's coming from a divine or a supreme source itself. That just means that that's the deference that you have submitted to in your human experience. What if actually none of that is true? You know, what you have been governing yourself by all this time was actually, what if you realize that, which many do take that route or have that awakening in some way, shape, and form, where what if it came to be that, like, the Bible, which we know the construction of it is problematic, and this is not blasphemous, this is real, that it's not only been added to, it's been taken away from, it's been translated, and so on and so forth. But what if it came to light, you know, by some preponderance of evidence that's irrefutable, that it was never really constructed to be a governing force of the creator, the supreme source of all. It was just created to keep man in line so that we didn't hurt ourselves or hurt each other. And maybe an era has transitioned where, just like it was no longer the stringent laws of the Old Testament, but it was a more nuanced governing that Jesus Christ introduced, not to, well, as he said, it wasn't that it wasn't like the law was obsolete, but it was fulfilled, and so now in the era that he was coming, he had a whole nother type of message that was blasphemous to the leaders of that time, because it wasn't congruent with what they had been groomed to defer to. And if that is, the track of historical reference, then why wouldn't that be true even now, even more so, so yeah, there's something about but far be it for the people to step out into those troubling waters without security, to know that it's okay, that you won't be condemned, that you won't be damned to hell, or judged as unrighteous or unworthy or unlawful or whatever. You wouldn't know that it's okay to exercise your freedom in that way until you were, in most cases, until you were shown that proof. Only, there are only but so many Harriet Tubmans in history, or at least that we know of, and comparatively to those that were in captivity, to the few that did rebel or did go against the grain, but that bravery and that fearlessness is what established a trajectory of freedom for others to then emulate, or at least benefit from, in some way, shape, or form. There's something happening here that is really going to be shocking. Because what I've also been saying, yeah, Queen of Cups, what I've also been saying, it's like a new order of self-love here. That's what it is, and understanding self on a deeper level, with more compassion, more grace. Less conditions. Maybe unconditionally. It's unheard of, even for those that have so-called awakened. For myself, who sees religion, organized religion, and spirituality, and just independence and creativity overall, aside from any of it, as in a broader scope than what I was groomed to see so, or groomed to believe for. There are still ways every day that I have to coax myself into being, into breaking a chain, sometimes subconsciously, sometimes right up in front of my face, under my nose. But the residue of captivity is still there, especially subconsciously. And when you're not aware of it and intentional about liberating yourself at every point of realization, it's just only natural that you would be consumed by it to the point where ultimately you wouldn't need to be necessarily controlled by any external force, because you end up containing yourself, keeping yourself from operating in the highest frequency of your divine right and your natural order, even because somewhere down the line somebody told you that that was out of bounds, or you were out of order, or that was off limits. So it's like the training wheels are coming off on creation. And like I said, for those that have a particularly refined and intentional focus on productivity and prosperity, it's good news, because you'll learn and ultimately begin to flex in a frequency of power that you've never experienced of yourself before. But it can also be a little bit terrifying, because you may be used to certain limitations and you don't want to, having that resonance of responsibility, you wouldn't want to overstep your bounds. And so you'll be, for those that are really kind of starting to really test the waters, literally, and what this new covenant truly means, or reestablished covenant between divine and creation, you could find yourself like kind of like, treading lightly, or being very careful in some ways, because there is really no particular example or point of reference for just how far you can go. You are the point of reference for others. So it's even like with Jesus's coming and, it's his presence in the Bible, what should have been a sign of liberation for the captives of that day morphed into yet another point of deference for many, even now, which is what I feel is being kind of lifted or reimagined in a way, where his whole message was pretty much like, look at me, this is what you can do. And the reason how I know is because my reflection is my supreme, and I've been ordained and told that this is what I have the power to do, and I've been sent to tell you that you do too. But that was lost in translation, especially over time, and it was contorted to be captivation for the people, to actually put a hamper on their self-empowerment, and to defer it to a source beyond them, or to condemn those that don't defer to that source beyond them. Again, divisive, which was the last thing that the presence of Jesus would have been most effective to do. It was supposed to be uniting. Yeah, here's the enlightenment right here. Here it is. Oh, this, thank God, hit the floor just like that. 5 of Cups in the reverse. To really liberate us from this despair, this grief, this depression, oppression. Again, the very opposite of this unconditional love for self. This is that in the upright is the condemnation, is the shame, the guilt, the regret, remorse. coming down on yourself, beating yourself down for your experience of life, maybe even for your choices that's being overturned, or for your what it is your shortcomings, your sins, which is ultimately falling short of your divinity or of God itself. Wow. So there's new revelation being disseminated regarding the true nature or the true resonance of sin, the true resonance of unworthiness and lack, maybe even the origin of it altogether, so that it can be eradicated, or we be eradicated from it. I don't know, whichever makes sense. All right, two more, and then I'm out. And it's like really coming to a clear understanding of it's not just a matter, across the board of, oh, you can do no wrong type of energy. Is really coming to a deeper understanding of where you may be deficient, but more so of self-love. That really the origin of your actions, your impulses, your choices has come down to how much or how little you love yourself. And again, what does that revert back to but conditioning, dogma, doctrine, grooming, upbringing, distorted messaging, everything that you can think of, But that's what really the root of shame truly does come in. It's a matter of if you really have done something or have participated or invested in something that is shameworthy to you, really and truly, then it's coming down to getting to the root and the depth of why you did that in the first place. What was the deficiency that consumed you to do that, and then feel shameful about it, or then to, feel condemned for it? Like, what is the root of it all? And how can you, here it is, repent, change your mindset, change your energy to love yourself more, so that you don't recreate that cycle, that feeling, or that outcome. Not to just keep circling back to it and staying stuck in it, even worse with the hangman. Yeah, it's like a different way of looking at healing and wholeness that doesn't have to be completely void of some of the doctrines that I speak in scriptures all the time. That's how I was groomed. I was raised, So it's not about like denouncing everything that brings value to you, even when you discover a nuance in your understanding of it. It's really just about getting to its purest state and form, or most organic form of truth for you. And that comes back to governing yourself, of accepting the ordination of priesthood over your life to make those types of strong decisions without guilt and without shame. To look over the landscape of your life and what's been created, and to say, this is working for me, this is giving me what I truly desire at my core, and this is not. this I find has value for me, but this not so much. We've been really pretty much conditioned, not just religiously, but just overall, to just accept life as it comes and deal with it. Accept even some disempowerment to create something different or inspire something different. It's just not true. Look at this, the Hermit. It's just not true. Going within, finding that truth for yourself, and being guided from the supreme forces and sources that you do reverence, that you do respect, that you do find, have trust for, that have never steered you wrong, or maybe a fresh understanding of it, a more refined understanding, won't steer you wrong, and you can trust that. But it's a personal journey. It can't be dictated by anything or anyone outside of you. As the priest of your own life, you decide what practices are carried out and what are not. Even as you're inspired from a supreme source, the priest had to physically follow the orders or choose not to, or the guidance, I should say, the script, the scroll, the text, whatever it is that you submit to. It still comes down to the choice that you make to follow it, to integrate it, to enact it, to initiate it, to be initiated or not. You're so much more powerful than you give yourself credit for, than you allow yourself to assume. And that's not your fault. That's been that's been a strategy of powers that will assume that power for themselves, while they convince you that you don't have it and you don't possess it, and you're not worthy of it, you're not trustworthy to manage it, and so on and so forth. It's not even an option for you. Even how to this day, I literally heard someone say this, she's more disciplined in like the Christian tradition. But I was into most of what she had. I was fascinated in what she was saying. And then she said something like, women can't be preachers, or would she say women can't be pastors? I think she did make that distinction. And I was like, wow, like in this day and age, she still subscribes to that. And I'm sure will scripture you down as to how, is relevant in the Bible. But there are a lot of things that are that I'm sure even she doesn't follow. So it's just interesting that's one thing, and even in this day and age, that still holds fast to her consciousness, and to many, where church, my home church, as a matter of fact, never had a woman pastor. It didn't have many pastors, even though it's been it's over 100 years old. There weren't a whole lot of leaders to come through. Thankfully, leaders did kind of live a long life in that church. Church full of love, by the way, like most loving church I've ever encountered still, but never had a female pastor, and only one female preacher that was an associate pastor from my as I witnessed it. Maybe something different now, but up until then, only one ordained minister had come through the church. So I know from firsthand experience, how that indoctrination carries on, even when there's plenty of evidence to suggest that a woman pastor could be just as efficient, if not more so, than any male counterpart, but just a small example. So imagine the revelations that are about to make themselves known and evident collectively, and how much pushback and resistance folks that have believed a certain way are going, it's going to be immediately demonized. Some of the things that are about to come to the surface, for sure. It's just going, and for the purposes of protecting your own safety, your longevity, your good standing with God. It's going to be unbelievable, the things that are being revealed as truth, in this day and age, to those that have only subscribed to one way of truth, and that one being distorted at that, remixed, in many ways. Like I said, it's not limited to religion, but that's just how I'm expressing it because of how we started with the Hierophant. It just makes sense. But it's just about the way of life, how you do life. Oh, look at this with the, man, this is something. With the Fool, it's about to be fresh and new. And some are going to be with it and some are not. It's like the invitation is being extended to one and all, but some people are going to be like, I ain't going that way. Some will wait to see if the priests that step into those waters are going to be swept away to their demise. And when they realize that it's not so, then they'll be inspired to follow suit. And some are just going to keep on doing what they do, following their own wickedness for what it's worth. And that will ultimately be their own containment and confinement, their own sealing, so something for everybody here. I suppose. Strength, wow. With the Four of Wands. Four of Swords. Yeah. Strength, the endurance, the resilience, the will to rest assured that the way that you are being guided is safe and secure. Safe and secured. Bars. It's going to take a whole lot of power, perseverance, and personal trust for those that have, again, been appointed to these positions, these leadership positions, to forge a path in this new era with no particular point of reference other than the past. But this is the way forward. This is something new. Shall you not perceive it? I hope that you do. Bars. I hope that we all do see the path that is being paved for us in the ways that we've never been before, because that's the ultimate guide to this fortune and favor that we all covet at the core of our being. To just live freely, to live abundantly, abundant life. Yet another message of Jesus Christ that went over a lot of people's heads and still does to this day. But to actually be presented with the way to, like the the what do you call it, like the direct route, finally to sans all the detours and the disruptions and the construction and all of that, and find your way right into your promised land, specifically and uniquely designed for you. Man, what an accomplishment. What an accomplishment. And I wish all those that have the faith for it, indeed, Godspeed. Bars. Let it be accelerated transition out of captivity, out of wilderness, into a place that is certain and secure, where you can build for sure. Bars. All right. Oh man, yes, it's the foundation that generations to come are dependent on. Like, that's what's being laid down now, just by your courage to say yes to you, to love yourself a little more deeply, to understand your uniqueness, and to see yourself the way that the divine sees you, even if you can't at first, to aspire to do so, and certainly to not resist the reflections that come to reveal you to you, i.e. the Jesuses of creation. As you are morphing into a reflection, or are, a reflection of that energy of truth, and great possibilities, unlimited possibilities yourself. You got to see it in you first to believe it, and ultimately to reflect it for others, that those generations to follow your footsteps. It's only going to work for the greatest good of creation overall, to have more and more be indoctrinated into that nuance of faith now, because that's what's going to sustain us, perhaps eternally. Nothing less certainly will at this point. All right, so thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.